evening they wanted to hear a moody blues like Come On in My Kitchen. Maybe they wanted Son to liven up the mood with a Fats Waller number. Maybe they wanted to hear about rambling and hoboing, and the two men would harmonize and yodel on Jimmie Rodgers' Waiting for a Train. Or maybe it was Annye's turn to show off, and they'd back her on a song and dance routine from the new Ginger Rogers musical. Johnson is at the center of this audiobook, but he is surrounded by a lot of other people. One striking figure is Charles Dodds, who became Charles Spencer after a lynch mob forced him to move to Memphis. A barber, carpenter, and jack of all trades, he also seems to have been a formidable musician and mentored the young Johnson, the son of his first wife by another man, but welcomed as a son to the Memphis household, along with a changing cast of children, grandchildren, wives, ex-wives, and their various spouses and partners. Another notable character is Sister Carrie. In the first half of the audiobook, she is the fly member of the family, the one with a radio and a phonograph, whose home was Johnson's favorite stopping place when he came back through Memphis in later years as a working musician. In the second half, she is the one who keeps the family connected as they move north, takes care of the ones who need care, and then, when Johnson's music is discovered by a new generation of fans around the world, becomes tangled in the increasingly complicated strands of his legacy. Finally, there is the voice that tells the stories. I would have enjoyed this audiobook under any circumstances, but particularly appreciate it because it gave me the opportunity to meet Annye Anderson. Preston Lauterbach invited Peter Guralnick and me to spend an afternoon with them, and we planned to ask her some questions about Robert Johnson and Memphis. Before we could get to that, she was discussing her plans to travel when the audiobook comes out, first to England, then South Africa, and France. The mention of France reminded her of her friend Archie Shepp, the avant-garde jazz saxophonist, and soon she was talking about Max Roach and Julius Lester, likewise friends in her current hometown of Amherst, Massachusetts. Then the conversation moved to her barbecue sauce, which she has marketed to merchants around the state, and to her husband's laboratory work, and meeting Dr. Charles Drew, the African-American surgeon who pioneered modern blood banks. Listening to her plans, enthusiasm, and range of interests at age 93, I can only imagine how vibrant and fascinating she must have been as a young woman. And I cannot help thinking about all the stories we will never know. In particular, all the African-American stories, because they never happened to intersect with a blues legend. Robert Johnson's music is timeless and speaks to us today in ways nobody could have imagined in the 1930s. But it was also the music of a particular time and place, and to some extent, of a particular family. He spent time in the Mississippi Delta and further south in Hazelhurst, traveled west to Texas, north to Chicago, and east to New York. His musical influences included Son House and Willie Brown at backcountry picnics, Leroy Carr, Kokomo Arnold, and Lonnie Johnson on wind-up Victrolas, Jimmie Rodgers on the radio, Gene Autry in the movies, and whatever was hitting on jukeboxes wherever he traveled. Memphis was one of many places Johnson stayed and played, but it was a special place for him. His mother, Julia, first left him with Charles Spencer when he was 7 years old, and that remained the closest thing he had to a permanent home. He joined his mother for a few years in the rural Delta, briefly married, and tried to settle on a farm, and stayed with lots of other people in other places. But he never set down roots anywhere else. Until the end of his life, he kept coming back to Memphis and the Spencers. I first read this manuscript, hoping to learn more about Robert Johnson, and it was interesting to read Mrs. Anderson's recollections of the people who raised and nurtured him. Charles Spencer, the closest he ever knew to a father, Son, his half-brother and musical partner, and his half-sister Carrie, who seems to have been something like a second mother to him. As I kept reading, I began to picture Johnson in a new way, as part of that big